Welcome to the Lyfe Be Podcast. In every episode, we dive into the most relatable aspects of life, helping you navigate the complexities of our contemporary world. Let's get started.
Hi, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening all over the world, and welcome to Lyfe Be Podcast. It's another day where we get to come to your living rooms, on your gadgets, on your tablets, on your phones, and in your ears to talk about life. We're glad to have you watching us, listening to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcast. We're happy to have you. And today is a good day. I have a wonderful friend for many years, and he's a gentleman called Peter Mukiibi. He's going to be sharing some wonderful things. And please welcome with me, Mr. Peter Mukiibi. Hi, Peter.
Hi, Sami.
How are you doing?
Here. I'm well. And yourself?
I'm good. The last time I sat down with you was about 2004, 2003,
Yes.
when we did a song and you're singing, jump up and touch the sky. We're going to tear the roof off and touch the sky. And when they ask why we act this way, we're going to tell them that we are born again. You used to be a rapper. Tell us about that.
Well, those are good memories. But first of all, yes, my name is Peter Mukiibi, and I am married to one wife, have one son, and good Ugandan citizen. That's how I would describe myself. But I'm also an artist at heart. I grew up loving art ever since I was a child. I used to love singing. Actually, not that I used to love it. I think I had an auntie who used to play a lot of music, and at first I didn't get it, and then after a while I got into the groove, and when I fell in love with music, I really, went all in. So so you grow up and you have these dreams, but of course, as we all know, there's something called school and getting an education.
Yeah. And
when you're in school, you're kind of discouraged from doing some of these things, at least for the schools that we went to,
Yeah.
It was a taboo to be caught with a radio, I remember my very good friend, Benon Mugumbia. We used to sit on the same...
Swangs Avenue.
From Swangs Avenue, yeah. We used to sit on the same desk. And we used to write lyrics, things in books and stuff like that. But that was, alongside the education that we were doing. And I think it's important for us to help young people to know that their dreams are valid.
Yes.
Because when you're getting an education, when you're in school, I like to think of it as you'll be in a class, and in that class you'll have mathematicians, you will have engineers, you'll have physicians, and you might have some musicians in there, and those dreams are valid, whichever way you look at it. So whereas we need to get an education and, study and pass, we are all not going to be bankers and accountants and doctors. Some of us are called to art, and we need to look at that as a profession. Actually, nowadays, I'm sure people see it, parents see it, that, when your child is doing something they love, you don't struggle as much to get them out of bed because this is something that they were born to do,
Yes.
Yes, so if you realize that your child is very good at tennis at a very tender age, imagine supporting him through that journey, I don't know if you've watched that movie about the Serena sisters and how their dad, was very supportive but also very tough, and that made them what they are now. So I think people's dreams are valid. And of course, sometimes when you're young, you are all over the place, because there was a time I thought I was going to be a table tennis player. I thought I was going to be, a swimmer. I thought I was going to be all these things. But allowing children to go through these experiences and then in the end also giving them that that liberty to pick, you know, because I remember when I finally made the decision that I wanted to be an artist and I wanted to do these film things. I was lucky. I had a very understanding guardian parent who asked me, "Oh, so what do you want to do?" And I was like, "I love music and all that." And they gave me some money. I was part of this group called Thug Squad, and we went to Nairobi, Kenya. Some gentleman had met us right outside of KPC and told us, "You guys,
Watoto Church now."
Yeah, Watoto Church now. He told us, "You guys, I'm going to make you big," you know. And at that time, all the big Ugandan artists, Bebe Cool, Chameleon, they were all recording, in Kenya. So he told us, "Come to Kenya." So I managed to get my guardian parents to give me some money. We got on a bus, went to Kenya, and we were robbed on the first day. First day. The gentleman received us, as he had said, got all the money from us, the money for studio and all that, and he told us, you know, in Kenya, things are very serious. I'm going to pick you guys up at 4 a.m. Be ready. We were ready. Did the guy show up? 5, 6, 7. By 10, the hotel was telling us, "You guys, do you realize you've been robbed?" You know, we had given him all the money. So my friends jumped onto the next bus and returned to Uganda. I was like, I can still push, you know, let me just ask around and see if I can find myself in a studio, even if it means sleeping there for at least a week. I need to record something, you know. Yeah, so I stayed there for 2 weeks and recorded some things and returned. But I quickly realized that, that life, I was not ready. You know, I was not ready. So my guardian parent, when I told him about what happened, he laughed so hard and he said, "Oh, okay, so what else do you want to do in life?" And I told him, "Well, I like music, but I really, really love film, you know." And he was like, "Sure." So, so he managed to talk to someone at Lighthouse Television. I did an interview there. Wasn't called for 6 months. Was just sitting at home, you know. And eventually when they called me, I got my first experience at videography and film at Lighthouse Television. And that's where I discovered myself and my career started from there. Yeah.
Oh, your career as?
My career as a filmmaker or a storyteller.
So Peter Mukiibi is a filmmaker.
Yes.
Outside all his other artistic gifts, you chose to major in film.
Yes.
So your journey in film starts at Lighthouse.
Yes.
And what were you doing at Lighthouse? Were you doing camera? Were you doing script? Were you doing lighting? Because I know these are different components of filmmaking.
Yes.
There's scripting, there's lighting, there's sound.
Yeah.
There's camera work. So what exactly were you doing?
So it's interesting actually that you asked that question, and people never realize the time it takes for you to, you know, cross from Egypt to the promised land.
Yes.
They kind of think that as soon as you leave Egypt, you know, it'll be in a day. Yeah. But the truth is, when I was at Lighthouse, and don't laugh, I was doing logs. Logs is where you get a sheet of paper and then you draw these tables and you put at
the different programs.
The different programs at the different times. 6 a.m. Benny Hinn will play. 6:30 TD Jakes will play. Creflo Dollar. That is what I was doing at Lighthouse.
Really?
Yes. For about 2 years.
Wow.
And you can imagine you are in a space where there are cameras, there are lights, there are machines, but you're not allowed to touch them because I'd really entered like entry point. You know, you're just in your S6 VAC. You know nothing. You know, you've never gotten any experience, so no one can trust you. And all I used to do was just to watch people who are manning these things. But I craved every day for the opportunity. And one day, one of my bosses went on leave. And because I had sat next to her, like watching what she used to do, I was literally cramming this stuff. And sometimes, of course, she would give me the opportunity. She would say, sit there, do this, do that, do that. But I was never like, allowed to man a machine without someone, next to me. So she would literally switch on the machine. And if she was going away, she would switch it off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, but she went on leave, and I asked now my the MD at the time. He was a gentleman called Gary Everett. I asked him for an opportunity to work on one of the computers, and he said, "No way! This computer. It was an Apple machine.
Yeah.
One of the very few in Uganda. It was donated by Joyce Meyer. And it was like a prized machine. They used to call a technician from the UK to fix any bug that was on it. And I asked him for an opportunity to sit on it and play around with it. And you could tell he was very uncomfortable. And he looked into my eyes and he told me, Peter, if you mess anything up on this machine, you had better be, I don't know, like... I can't remember what words he used, but anyway, so I got an opportunity. I sat on the machine, and so we had work hours. So we were supposed to be there at 7 a.m., leave at 5. Work would start at 8, so you do devotions from 7 to 8, and then have breakfast between 8:30, and then kick off the day. And by 5, studio had to be locked, and the only person who would stay in the studio was the person who was doing the switch, who was working on the switching the programs, which I also did for some time, so and all this was to gain experience. So I started working on this machine. I would stay in that studio, wait for my boss to leave at 5, or I would walk out of the gate at 5 and then come back with a guy who was going to work on the switch so that I would get more experience on this machine. And lo and behold, just after, I think, 3 weeks, everybody was amazed at what I was doing on this machine. And so the marketing guys started telling the boss that, let Peter do this advert. Let Peter, that's how my career, kicked off. Yes.
So how do you then end back at Watoto?
So Watoto was much, much later. So when I was working at Lighthouse, I was praying at Rubaga Miracle Center. Yeah. So, and then I, of course, had gone to school with some friends. Who I kind of bumped into, and they were like, we pray from KPC, and you need to come and check out our church. And they had like this youth group. So I went, checked out the church, and I was like, it's good, but it feels so big, you feel like no one will even see or notice you,
Yeah.
So I left and went to another small church somewhere there at Bat Valley. It was called Jesus Alive Center.
Oh, yeah. Pastor Richard Lutwama.
Yes, and Balo. Yeah. I prayed with them for about, I think, maybe like 3 years. And that's where actually Thug Squad was born.
Yeah.
And because we were this rap group, some people didn't find it normal. They were like, rap is for, the devil. It was created by the devil and all that. So we started getting these very, radical, should I say?
Christians.
Yeah, Christians criticizing who we were. It's like, so we were calling ourselves thugs. So rap is a culture.
Yeah.
What people don't understand is that rap is a culture. And yes, I might wear my jeans low, sagging, and act a certain way, but that doesn't mean that I'm distant from God, and that's what we were trying to communicate to people, that we are young, we are fascinated by this art, and we think we can use it to spread the gospel.
Yeah.
Yeah, but some people didn't see it, and there's this one of the pastors called us in, and he said, you guys, you realize you're serving the devil, And he beat it into our heads. And when we walked out of his office, we were all confused. We were like, okay, now what do we do? Some people said, okay, we're going to leave the church. And then something told me, because this church wasn't very far away from Watoto, told me, take a stroll to Watoto, sit on the pews and just... Because now I was confused. Now what do I do? Anyway, so when I went to Watoto, I got there and... there was something lively about, what was happening there. They seemed to be into the whole multimedia and how to use it. I was like, this actually feels like a place that I want to be, because I always wanted to use my talents to serve God, So I remember I met a prophet who was like, oh, you're going to be a leader and you're going to have many people following you. And I was like, I don't see myself in politics. I don't see myself as a celebrity. I don't think this is true. But then I knew that I wanted to use my talents to serve God, So I was like, I don't think I'm going to be a pastor, a preacher, or anything like that. But what I know is that this gift that God gave me, which is music and art, because I still use my music gifts when I'm creating people's stories, So I want to use it to serve God. And so someone tells me, oh, Watoto is starting a media team. Would you like to come and volunteer? I was like, sure, I will come. So when I went to volunteer, that's how I ended up really being embedded into the church and all the programs. And I fell in love with the place because it allowed me to express myself in a good way, even musically. I don't know if you remember the days of Beat On. Beat On.
I ran Beat On for a while.
Yes. Sami, I remember you. Yeah. And actually, you were one of the people who really inspired me at that point in time, because I remember you are this cool young guy traveling with a choir. And every time you would come back, you would kind of encourage people to just fall in love with their gifts and talents. I remember, I don't know if you remember that time where we sat there at the Watoto reception and talked for hours. And I was like, wow, because you are giving me your experience of traveling on tour and how you had done that and you felt it was time for you to settle in Uganda and, push your career. So, you're one of the people who inspired me.
Thank you. I didn't remember that. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Okay, so you plug into the media team and you're a volunteer there.
Yes.
There's a project that I'll never forget. It was the rebrand from Kampala Pentecostal Church to Watoto. You remember what I'm talking about?
I do.
The whole Penny pregnancy thing. Tell us about that. I don't want to spoil the story by telling it when you're here, so you can tell us about that project, because it's one that stuck with me all these years, and I keep talking about it because it was very outstanding. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you remember it, and yet for me, because I worked on so many projects when I was at Watoto, and not just even Watoto, but of course after I left.
Yeah.
And sometimes people always ask me, which is your best project, which is where, and there is a thing where you get to a point where, and I don't know what it's like for you, like in terms of writing songs and music, where you feel like you've done it so much and you pretty much like everything you've done.
It's like they're your children.
Exactly.
There's not, I like this one better than the other. I like all of them. They're just different.
Yeah. So for you, I totally understand when you say that project stood out for you. And yet for me, it's more or less like, man, do I even remember what I did? Because that was about, 14 years ago, and from there I've done so many other projects. But maybe if I was to, maybe talk about in general, I would say in general, the work that I did at Watoto.
Okay.
One, I think Watoto had a system whereby there were experts who would kind of come with all this knowledge in them.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is that we, the locals, didn't know much then.
That's true.
We were just beginning to, experience what it's like to work with a super fast computer, to hold a camera. We were just experiencing those things for the first time. And the experts would come in with all this knowledge, and it was up to the locals to figure out how to work alongside the expatriates and learn as much as they could, so that one day when these people would, their time or the contracts were up, they would go and you would have that knowledge in you. So I was one of those people who I always looked for either the smartest person in the room, or I always looked to be as close to my boss as possible, because I knew that I needed to
learn
and soak in as much, So when we were doing, I remember when we were starting the media team, my bosses said, why are people reading news announcements? Why don't we make videos,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and we coined this phrase, KPCNN,
Yeah.
And that changed how people, would I say, communicated in terms of, because we're all used to church announcements, someone goes up there and he reads and says, oh, there's going to be a Watoto village tour. And then you're like, what if we showed them what these tours are like,
So because they can have visuals
exactly.
of it.
So
that was brilliant.
Yeah. So we started doing these things whereby you could literally tell that. So for me, the way I was working is that, I would be, let's say, working with my boss who was an expert, and then I would try to bring in the authenticity, the Ugandan touch to the work, and think about, okay, as Ugandans, I remember there was a project that we did. It was a Christmas cantata where we portrayed what Christmas was like back in the villages
in Uganda.
And we had these videos playing alongside the cantata, and people were really, really moved because they were like, "This looks very cool, and it has a feel of Uganda," and. Yeah, like every time I approached a project, that was something that I always thought about in my mind, was that how does this connect to humanity? When you say a pregnant woman, like how does someone feel, when they see a communication relating to something that they're going through. So for me, that is something I always try to embed in my work, and I still do.
To make it relatable.
Yes, make it as relatable as possible. So yeah, I mean, even there was an advert that I remember very well. I think it was called Super Christian or something like that. And yeah, we were trying to communicate the whole tithing. And I think those days, sometimes I used to even film myself. But, excuse me. Yeah, but I remember sitting in the pews and I recorded myself. And, okay, now the script has gone away. But what I remember is that we were trying to portray that it's not down to how much you are able to give on a Sunday, but it's more about you having the heart for God. And sometimes when you have the heart for God, you will come to church when you're broke.
Yeah.
And you might have only 200 shillings to give, or probably even nothing to give. But the mere fact that you are there, and maybe the next Sunday you will be able to give. And people were so moved by it. It was a very short skit.
Yeah.
I can't remember the script very well, but people were really moved. And it's things like those that kind of make me happy, knowing that I'm using my gifts to serve God, you know. Yeah, to communicate really well.
So you do all that, and then you leave Watoto and start your own company, right? Just tell us what it was like for you to start your own business at a young age, because you were still young.
Yeah, I was still young.
You didn't have the experience to run a company,
Yes,
and all that, but you had your skills and your tools and your
Yeah.
passion. Tell us about your company. What's the name? What do you do? How did you start it? How was starting out for you like?
Okay, so first of all, I think when I was working at Watoto, I never at any point imagined myself working anywhere
Elsewhere.
else.
I know.
Yes.
Because you had everything you needed, right? That you had
Exactly.
the gadgets you needed, good working environment, very
Home.
professional.
Yes.
It was your church. You
Yes.
felt you're at home. You had
Yes.
your friends with
Yeah.
you all the time.
Yes. So, of course, you sometimes, like any human being, you start to get asked these questions by your parents, like, so are you going to look for a better paying job and
I
things like
know.
that?
What's next?
Yeah, what's next for you? You're not growing any younger. You need to be able to take care of yourself. I think I was dating openly, so my parents knew, and they were like, "Oh, you're going to have to take care of, your girlfriend, fiance at some point." But I was really in love with my work, and for me, it wasn't really so much about what I was being paid or whatever, but it was just that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So when God shook my nest and he was like, it's time for you to leave. I was like, leave and go where, And of course, I had this friend of mine who was studying in South Africa, and then he had completed his studies and gotten a job. And every time he would come to Uganda, he would pass by KPC and call me, "Where are you?" And we would sit on those steps, at KPC and just talk. And he had planted this idea in my head that I should start a company. But, one of those things where you just say, yeah. But in your heart, you're like, no, me, I'm just happy to serve. I never, ever saw myself as a boss, leader, or anything like that.
You just wanted to do your thing.
Yeah. Work under someone, deliver as much as I could. So, anyway, so God shakes my nest and he's like, move on to the next thing. I'm like, hey, now where do I go? I tried to take my CV around. I had a very amazing recommendation letter that was written by Gary Skinner. And, oh, man, up to now, I look at that letter. I never got a job, but that letter is one of my proudest things. I used to look at it.
Can I tell you something?
Yes.
Because I worked there. I grew up at KPC in Watoto.
Yeah.
That was like gold.
Yes.
He doesn't give recommendations like that.
Yes.
Normally it will be your cell leader or your zonal leader, but
Yes.
for him to give you a handwritten recommendation he must have really believed in you and what you did.
Yes.
And I think that's something that is worth highlighting and noticing.
Yes.
Because it's special.
Yes.
And also that means that your contribution to that team was really appreciated.
Yeah, I'm really humbled, and to date I've kept that letter because I took it to what's that station? NTV.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought maybe I can work at NTV because I was really confused. I didn't know where to go.
Yeah.
But then I also knew that wherever I wanted to work, I wanted to change things.
Yes.
So I went to NTV, took my CV, and they told me to meet the producer and give her my documents. So after a week, I went to check on her, and she was like, I've never read your CV,
Wow.
but it's there, I'll read it whenever whenever I have time.
Wow.
So I remember I walked out, then something told me, go back in there, get your papers and leave.
And leave.
Yeah, so I went back, got my papers, told her, okay, can I at least have the documents? And so I was like, sure. I think I wasn't really smart. I hadn't photocopied the letter, the recommendation letter.
Yeah.
So I felt like I needed to get it.
To go back and get your letter. Yeah.
So I got my letter and left. And when I left, somehow, somewhere, like this friend of mine in South Africa calls me and he's like, hey, what are you up to? I'm like, oh man, can you imagine I just left my job? I was like, and he was like, what? Dude, start the company. I was like, are you serious? Like, I don't have any money. I don't have nothing. I don't even have rent.
Yeah.
So he told me he was going to pay my rent I think it was like for that month. And that I would figure it out.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, so his name is Robert Mukasa. We are still
I was
friends
about
up to
to ask.
today. Yeah.
And you're friends up to this day.
We are friends and we're business partners. So yeah, I had worked with a certain gentleman called Uncle Sam, for those who are in the industry. He's much older, like my dad's
Was
age.
that Lighthouse?
No, he had his own company. It's called
Uncle
Sam
Sam.
Serumaga.
Was that it's a what's something Globtech? Was that Globtech?
No, Globtech was another gentleman, Tendo.
Yes, Globtech is
yeah,
Tendo,
but
sorry.
this one was the OGs,
I know.
people who are there, who had these big cameras. Like he was there even
Like
before.
the broadcast cameras.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he had also kind of guided me along the way. And he had a son called Arthur Nakaka. So we had worked together at a small startup.
Yeah.
That was, I think, right before Watoto. I'd worked with them and a gentleman called Solomon King Benge.
I know Solomon King.
Yes.
He has a company called Fundi Bots.
Fundi Bots, yes. So, and we had worked together at Benge's startup. And when I decided to start my company, I was like, I remembered Arthur, and I was like, it would really be good to work with this gentleman again. Much, much younger than I am, but very, very focused young man. And he was always a straight A student and things like that, doing engineering. And I was like, how do you convince an engineering person to join the creative,
Yeah.
But because his dad had done that, he kind of had that gravitational pull towards the creative. And yeah, so my friend in South Africa convinced me to start a company. I talked to Arthur and he was still at campus. I was like, dude, we will co-own this company and all that. And he was like, okay, I mean, if you're up for it, it seems like you're ready to go. But I can't join you now because I'm in I think he was in his second year at the time. And then I allowed him to finish school. But every once in a while I would pop into his hostel and just share with him what I was working on, and he would advise, and he would work on some graphics. He's a very good graphics designer. And and that's how we started ADDMAYA. The company is called ADDMAYA.
That is what I was going to ask you next. ADDMAYA. How do you spell ADDMAYA?
It's spelled ADDMAYA.
So you add Maya to the...
Maya, yes.
Is that because of the program Maya?
Yes, it's because of the program Maya. Because when I was starting the company, I didn't have a name, and my friend was like, so what are you going to call the company? And I just had no name. So he told me, okay, while you're thinking about the names, you write the softwares that you need and all that. So as I was writing the softwares, I thought about Maya. I was like, should I add Maya to this list? But it's so expensive,
So you just added Maya.
Yeah, so I was like,
Maya.
What if I call the company ADDMAYA, and it rhymes with the whole admiring something and things like that. Yeah, so that's how the name came up.
That's
and
beautiful.
we started in 2009, and up to date, we are still, going
Running.
strong. Yeah.
What are some of the clients you've had and some of the major projects you've worked on? Who are some of your clients along the way?
Yeah, so, oh my goodness, we've had so many clients over the years, and of course the major ones would be your big telecom companies,
Like who?
like MTN. We did a lot of work for Orange and Vodafone. Excuse me. I remember Orange even gave me a phone and a line with free airtime.
Wow.
Can you imagine? Just because I was doing work for them. And I was on MTN. They convinced me to drop my number, move to
and
Orange.
go to Orange, yeah.
And when I went on to Orange, I was stuck there for the longest time. Even when MTN got these new products like mobile money, I was just loyal to Orange. And then we did a lot of work for Vodafone. But I would say most of the work that we've done has been more in the documentary space.
Okay.
Because remember, again, when I was at Watoto, it was all about storytelling.
Yeah.
And, I crafted...
Documenting events and all that, yeah.
So we've done work for organizations like GIZ, basically telling people's stories. I've traveled, been lucky enough to travel all over Uganda, even to the farthest point, like those places, Bidi Moyo, where documenting refugees, the lives of refugees. Okay. Of course, the challenging thing about some of the work we do is that it's very confidential and very, it's not work that you can
put out there and
say,
show your
work.
Yeah.
So for instance, if I'm filming refugees, I cannot just flash their faces because
you can't share that content because you're protecting the people and all that.
Exactly. So I can only get their stories, which are taken by the stakeholders to see what these people are going through and what they need.
Yeah.
And then of course, at some point after COVID, I had this burning desire
to do a movie. I knew it.
And by the way, that dream had been with me for the longest time. But it's just that the way, of course, the film industry is right now in Uganda, it's good, it's growing, but financially, it's still struggling.
Yeah.
So when you are coming from a business, because I was lucky enough that even as I was training myself in the craft, I was also picking up business skills and understanding that it's not just about putting out cameras and filming things to feel good, but you need to be able to have some sort of value attached.
That's true.
And when you have a team, a crew, you need to be able to pay them. You need to be able to buy their time, because they are also old people with responsibilities.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what kept me away from film for the longest time, because I was like,
the budgets are not.
Yeah, they don't add up. You're like, how are you going to pay people? And even when I was making my film, that was one of the things that was on my heart. I was like, I would really, really love to pay my whole crew. That was a very, very huge thing for me. And of course, we managed to pay some of them. Some we didn't. But I learned a lot when I was making Nambi. Nambi.
Okay, Nambi.
Yeah, so Nambi was a dream that I had because we grew up hearing the story of Chintu
and Nambi.
Yeah. But mostly from the side of Chintu. And very little was told about Nambi. So I was like,
so you wanted to tell Nambi's story.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was like, this woman who was, because you know, as you grow up and you see how your parents carry themselves, in the African setting, it's so easy for us to lift up the man, the male figure, and say, oh, he's all things, you know, breadwinner, all that. But
He's the king. We don't look at the ladies and their contribution and how they support him and make him the man he is. Yeah.
Yeah. Recently, one of my friends, he graduated and he was amongst the top 10% in one of the universities in the UK. And when we were congratulating him, I said, congratulations, Mr. and Mrs., you know. And yeah, because I feel like sometimes, of course, he's married. And in my mind, I was like, there's no way he would have
made
done
it here
without the wife, you know.
That's so kind.
And I think it's very important for us. Yes, we like to glorify the male figure in our culture. It's cultural, but it's important for us to remember the people,
of the wife
behind
and
the scenes, the mothers, you know, because they do a lot. They really do a lot. For you to come here and sit on this podcast and not worry, you know, how the children are or what. There's someone behind there who is enabling you to do that. So, so for me, I really wanted to tell that story, but not from Chintu's
perspective,
point of view, but from Nambi. And, I'm proud of what I did. I can't call it a success yet. It does feel like a project that was a little bit ahead of its time because it has all these visual effects things and, you know, people...
That's why you should call it successful.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you know why I'm saying you should call it successful? You were able to tell your story with the tools you had.
Yes.
You were able to bring an idea you had in your mind to life and share it with other people so they can see it.
Yes.
It may not have made financial sense right now.
Yeah.
But maybe it would inspire somebody to want to do something at that level.
Definitely.
Or to a person who had a dream and they were scared to do it.
Yeah.
They can step out and do that. So to me, I'd think you were successful.
Thank you.
Because you wanted to do that for a very long time.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'd say you're successful.
I remember the struggle in finding the people to work with because there was a lot of, what do you call it? I had to change people's mindsets.
Yes,
about
from what they were used to.
Exactly.
Yes.
You know? So you get someone, you know, questioning so many things and you're like, okay, I know this is how it has always been done in Uganda, but I want us to do it like this, you know, things like that. And I mean, it was quite an experience because we traveled all the way to Moyo. That's where we shot the film. Yeah. And we shot some scenes in Belgium. And we shot some scenes in Kampala, you know. And this is, of course, a dated story, you know.
So you have to kind of try to go and make it look like the time.
Exactly. And, you know, and this, when you think about that story, it's, you know, sometimes for art to thrive, you really need that marketing side of things, whereby you're filming as a film like Gods Must Be Crazy, and you can afford to drop a Coca-Cola bottle from the aeroplane and it falls down on the ground.
From a different time.
Exactly. Because Coke is going to pay you for that, you know? But the story of Chintu and Nambi, I couldn't figure out
no endorsement.
I was like, how am I going to do this, you know?
Uganda Cultural Society can't give you that money.
Exactly. So very quickly I was hit by all this, oh man, you're on your own, you know? Yeah. And then, of course, Uganda, you're like, not many people know about this country. You know, when you mention Shaka Zulu and all that.
Everybody knows South Africa.
Yeah, everybody knows South Africa. So you're kind of starting off somewhere, you know. You tell people, there's a story about Chintu, and I'm like, what? So is it history? Is it a myth? Is it factual? Is it? Yeah. So there was a lot of things to deal with in terms of actually kicking off that project. But I'm glad how we did it and the amount of attention it got us, you know. We were talking to producers from the UK, you know, people from Australia, just about the project and seeing how they can support it.
It's beautiful.
People gave support, Ugandans and people abroad in terms of completing the film.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm really proud of what we're able to do. And of course, there are some discussions that are happening on how to expand.
That's why
the
it was
idea,
successful. Now
you know?
you can see that it was actually
but
successful.
nothing has landed yet. So yes.
Oh, well, our time is fast spent, but I just want to ask in closing, what would you tell to a young entrepreneur in the art space or somebody who has a dream to make a film or get into the film industry? What would be your closing remarks on that?
Okay, so and this might sound not very artsy and all that, but I think it's very important if you are going to be a businessman. If you're to start a company, I would say you really, really need to ensure that when you get your crew, you know, your producers, your camera person, make sure you have an accountant.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And a tax advisor. Because it can be very heartbreaking when you build your company for many years and then one day the taxman knocks on your door and is like, hey, we're going to close you. And usually it's even nothing big, like, you know, you've been defaulting because you're trying to hide from the taxman. Most times it's people don't know. Yeah, people don't know. People are not aware of the taxes they need to pay. And it ends up hurting you in the long run because by the time the taxman comes, he will give you maybe a figure like 30 million or
a rough estimate.
Yeah.
From the time you haven't paid.
From the time you haven't paid. And then he will tell you how that money has interest on it because you haven't paid it for those many years.
Oh.
And before you know it, the 30 will be 150.
Yeah.
It can be that bad, you know.
Yeah.
So my advice to young people who really want to, you know, start out in the arts is look at it as a business. That's number one, because at the end of the day, you're going to be, like Steve Jobs said, it's going to take up 3/4 of your life. You'll be doing this thing. You'll be doing it in the night when no one is watching. You're there on keys, hustling, punching in keys, writing scripts and all that. So it's going to take up a lot of your time, and it's also going to feed you. It's going to keep the lights on. So it's important that you pay attention to certain things so that
Be very intentional
about it. But then on the artsy side, I would say if you have that nudge in you, in your spirit to do something, do whatever you can to ensure that you do it, because you will never be able to find rest when you don't.
Yes.
You know? And what people never realize is I'm one of those people who I read the Bible, but not per se to cram the scriptures and say that, oh, this scripture is in Matthew 16 what. But I love the Bible stories because they teach you a lot in life, you know. So if you look at a story like Jesus and the 12 disciples, it shows you how leaders need people around them to advise, to kind of carry the mantle when your time is done. Someone else can pick up, and it's important for us to look at those stories and learn from them, you know.
That's beautiful.
So yeah. So for me, I always think about it, and I'm like, you know what? If you have something that God is nudging you to do, do it, and ask people to help you. You know, people never realize how much they don't get because they don't ask.
Yeah.
Ask God, ask people, ask Sami-K and say, you know what, I have a passion for music and you've been doing it for what, 20 years? What can you tell me? You know, I'm just thinking about entering this thing. What can you tell me about it? And you never realize it, but we all have different paths, you know, and it's important for you to not try to be like someone else, but just be a version of you that people will always remember and say, man, Sami-K was here.
That's true.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in and watching. Like and share. We're on Apple Podcasts. Google Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, and everywhere you find your podcasts. And we're on YouTube for video. And I would like to say you can like, share, and leave a comment. And please support us financially. We're on Cash App, on mobile money. Just go on there and find a way you can support us to keep doing this. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. We appreciate your time and we appreciate your support. Thank you, Peter, for coming through. It's been a wonderful time and having your time to come and do this.
Thank you too. And maybe just one shout out
Sure.
to my ADDMAYA colleagues.
Yeah.
Love you guys. Thank you for always pushing the envelope and going beyond. And yeah, I can't wait to see what things God has in store for the team.
Thank you. I can not forget to shout out to my team, the amazing Israel Dennis, the director, and my beautiful wife Gianna, who supports us on all the details for the podcast, and Jonas Rhymes, who helps us with the designs, and everybody that makes this happen. We appreciate you and we love you. God bless you. Life be.
Thank you for tuning in to the Lyfe Be Podcast with Sami-K. Your support means the world to us. Please leave a comment, subscribe, and share to help us grow and continue bringing you valuable content. We appreciate you.